Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're diving into something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about medieval history. So grab your favorite drink, dim those lights, and settle in. Because we're about to uncover some absolutely wild truths that sound like pure fantasy but are backed by solid historical evidence. You know how we love to imagine the Middle Ages as this dark, superstitious time where people believed the most ridiculous things? Well, here's the twist that's going to blow your mind. Some of those so-called ridiculous beliefs and practices were actually happening. I'm talking about stories so bizarre that historians for centuries dismissed them as medieval folklore, until archaeological evidence and historical documents proved them completely real. Before we jump in, smash that like button if you're ready to have your assumptions shattered, and don't forget to subscribe because trust me, you're going to want to see where this series goes. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing our global community come together for these deep dives into history's strangest corners. So, what exactly are we talking about here? Picture this. You're a medieval historian, sifting through ancient texts, and you come across stories about warriors who fought in trance-like states, seemingly immune to pain and fear. Your first instinct? Pure mythology. Viking propaganda. Exaggerated tales meant to intimidate enemies, but then archaeologists start finding Viking burial sites with bear and wolf pelts. Chemical analysis reveals traces of psychoactive substances. Historical accounts from multiple independent sources describe the same phenomena. Suddenly, what seemed like fantasy becomes historical fact. We're talking about the berserkers, those legendary Norse warriors who allegedly transformed into beast-like fighters during battle. For generations, scholars assumed these were just poetic embellishments, colorful additions to make Viking sagas more exciting. Turns out, they were documenting a very real military practice that involved ritual preparation, possibly including the consumption of mind-altering mushrooms. But that's just the beginning. Throughout medieval Europe, there were practices and events so outlandish that modern minds struggle to accept them. Yet the evidence keeps mounting. Court records, church documents, eyewitness accounts, and archaeological findings all paint the same picture. The Middle Ages were far stranger than we ever imagined. Take the phenomenon of mass dancing mania that swept through European towns. Imagine hundreds of people suddenly beginning to dance uncontrollably in the streets, unable to stop, dancing until they collapsed from exhaustion. It sounds like something out of a horror movie, right? But city records from multiple locations document these events in chilling detail. Or consider the legal system that put animals on trial. Not metaphorically, but literally, dragging pigs and roosters into courtrooms, assigning them lawyers, and conducting full legal proceedings. It seems absurd until you realize these weren't isolated incidents, but part of a widespread judicial practice across medieval Europe. The more we dig into medieval history, the more we discover that the line between myth and reality is far blurrier than we thought. These weren't primitive people making up stories around campfires. These were documented events, witnessed by hundreds, recorded by scribes, and preserved in official records. What makes these discoveries so fascinating is how they challenge our assumptions about the past. We like to think of ourselves as more rational, more civilized than our medieval ancestors. But when you start examining the evidence, you realize they were dealing with very real phenomena using the tools and understanding available to them. The question isn't whether these things happened. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is why we've been so quick to dismiss them as folklore, and what other medieval mysteries might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to take them seriously. Let's start with something that sounds like it came straight from a fantasy novel. Picture medieval monks building an entire monastery in the middle of a deadly swamp. Not on solid ground nearby, not on a hill overlooking the marsh, but literally rising from the boggy waters like something out of a fever dream. For centuries, historians rolled their eyes at tales of Crowland Abbey in the English fenlands. The stories seemed too fantastical to believe. Monks constructing elaborate stone bridges across treacherous marshland, creating raised walkways through miles of impassable bog, building a thriving religious community where no sane person would even attempt to travel. It had to be medieval exaggeration, right? Wrong. Archaeological excavations have confirmed every bizarre detail. These determined monks actually did the impossible. They drove wooden piles deep into the peat, constructed sophisticated drainage systems, and built a three-way triangular bridge that still stands today. They turned one of England's most inhospitable landscapes into a bustling center of medieval life. But why would anyone choose to build in a swamp? The answer reveals the brilliant practicality behind what seemed like madness. First, isolation. In a world where monasteries needed separation from worldly temptations, nothing said holy solitude quite like being surrounded by mosquito-infested marshland. Second, economics. Land nobody else wanted came cheap, sometimes free. These monks weren't crazy, they were opportunistic. And here's where it gets even more incredible. They didn't just survive in this waterlogged wasteland, they thrived. Crowland Abbey became famous for farming eels, producing cheese, and somehow managing to keep their feet dry while doing it. They created an entire economy based on what others saw as worthless swampland. Moving from soggy monks to something that'll really mess with your head, let's talk about Pope Joan, the woman who allegedly fooled the entire Catholic Church, climbed the ecclesiastical ladder, and became pope before dramatically giving birth during a papal procession. So, there you have it. The medieval world wasn't just stranger than we imagined. It was stranger than we thought possible. From warrior monks engineering their way through swamps to mysterious papal scandals that still puzzle historians today. These weren't fairy tales or folklore, they were reality. Makes you wonder what other impossible truths are hiding in history's shadows.